So welcome, the panel is about to come the word, it's not just going to be me. We're going to have three very good panelists, you will see. You're going to have Adrian Simpson. So Adrian is a representative of the British Retail Consortium. He's a chartered trading standards practitioner and a non-executive director of the Chartered Trading Standard Institute, with a background in frontline consumer protection and business advice. He will be speaking to you about the problems encountered by retailers in terms of the length and durability of the products. Then you can come on stage. Then you have Fiona. Fiona Deer. So Fiona Deer is the co-director of the Restart project. You may have heard about it. This project aims to keep our electronics in use for as long as possible through repair and reuse. So that's quite the topic today. Fiona has spent over 15 years working to engage public audiences in bringing about a more sustainable society. She will be the voice of the repair community on this panel. And last but not least, you're going to have Ian, who works at Whirlpool and has worked in the kitchen appliance industry for over 25 years across a variety of fields, including communication, customer service, and government relations. For the past 6 years, Ian has focused on sustainability and product safety. He will provide the view of the manufacturer on this panel. So what is this panel all about? And this is maybe you're like, oh, she's speaking really quickly. It's just that it is a lightning presentation. Not enlightening, but lightning. Meaning that each of the speakers will have 5 minutes to present their point of view and what they want to share with you. And when I looked up at what can you do in 5 minutes, there's a lot of things actually. You can learn how to sell in 5 minutes. You have things that you can fall asleep in 5 minutes, and I'm hoping you're not doing that right now. You do also have how to learn English in 5 minutes, why not? And you can also do a whole meal in 5 minutes, but obviously it won't be a French meal. I'm French, so I know it takes more than 5 minutes to do a proper meal, but whatever. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to be speaking less than 5 minutes because I did the introduction, but that's normal because I'm a lawyer, so you don't want to hear too much of a lawyer, and especially that they're only giving you bad news. I just wanted to set the context here. So the context is that as manufacturers, as retailers, as members of the industry, you are being watched, and increasingly watched by everyone, with the purpose of targeting you if you're not doing what they believe is the right thing you should be doing for the planet. So I've put there an interesting statistic whereby people believe that actually to work on climate and environmental issues, the main responsible person or the one who can do things would be governments. That's surprising to me simply because when you look at the number of claims that are being filed in the environmental field today, they're mainly against states. So still, maybe just suing them is the solution. Then you do have the public in general, and we've seen some very interesting data at the panel just before us as to how the public, by changing their consumer attitude, could influence what is going on the planet. And the third one is companies and businesses. And so this is you, and this is you who have and are expected to take measures. Why is this important? Simply because the claims are here already. According to the London School of Economics, in May 2022, you had over 2,000 claims in the world relating to environment and sustainability and the protection of the planet. 70% were against states, but 30% are against companies, actually, all over the world. The main pool is in the US, but this year is the first year where you have an actual increase in the number of cases that are filed outside of the US as compared as in the US. So beware about this. There's a lot of things about greenwashing. I think you've heard this name over and over again. So this is the type of claims that are being filed. The type of claims that are being filed as well is planned obsolescence claims, meaning that they go after manufacturers saying that the design that they're choosing is actually aiming at pushing consumers to buy more often products. And I've also put the French flag, not just because I'm French and proud of it, especially after yesterday night's match, but it's because we have introduced a couple of years ago what we call the duty of vigilance, meaning that any company of more than 5,000 employees has to put together what we call a vigilance plan, which details all the obligations and all what is being done by the company to ensure that the environment and human rights laws are complied with. And if you don't do that, you have NGOs suing you, either because your plan is not there or because it's not detailed or ambitious enough. And the number of claims is rising. Why am I telling you about it? Simply because right now there is discussions at EU level to introduce a duty of vigilance directive and to have all companies in Europe publish a plan where they explain what they're doing for the environment and human rights, or they would be sued by NGOs asking them to be better. This is me. I hope you're scared enough, and I'm gonna pass on to a much more lively person. Adrian, please.
Five minutes, here we go. Thank you, Sylvie. So I'm from the British Retail Consortium, which is the trade body for retailers in the UK, and we cover around 80% of all retail. In case you haven't heard, retail continues to experience continuing supply chain issues. This has been caused by rising fuel prices and shipping problems leading to a shortage of goods, and food prices have increased by around 13% and non-food prices by around 4%. There's things like an energy label that has to be put on goods. There's things like a water energy efficiency label that's going to come out as well. All of these things are going to add costs for retailers and to consumers. Now, as recently as 5 years ago, the Harvard Business Review was reporting that consumers had negative associations with sustainable product options, viewing them as being lower quality, less aesthetically pleasing and more expensive. 59% of consumers in 2022 are reducing the amount of new products that they are buying compared to 39% before the pandemic. Now, all of these issues are leading to retailers and brands increasing their sustainability credentials. Governments are aware of this and recently released a Green Claims Code in 2021. Consumers are learning more about their right to repair, which means that since July 2021, certain manufacturers of electrical goods must provide spare parts and repair information for up to 10 years after discontinuation of the products. Now, things like repair cafes, repair indices that are popular in France are not as popular in the UK or as well known as they are within the EU, although there is a growing number of repair cafes going. There is a strong right to repair movement within the EU. The EU has tremendous power over retailers there. Look at, for example, how they've got Apple to finally go towards USB-C chargers. I'm often asked, what is the future for product safety and regulation? And I tend to give the usual answer, which is look towards Europe. One of the things we get asked a lot in the BRC is how long should a product last? I'm going to give my usual trading standards answer here. There is no statutory definition of how long a product should last. You may be aware that under the Consumer Rights Act, consumers in England and Wales have up to 6 years to claim for a faulty product, or 5 years in Scotland. This does not mean that a product must last 6 years or 5 years. It just means a consumer can bring about a claim for that. If you do look into the right to repair legislation or eco-design regs, there is actually some timelines there, but that's about the nearest that we've got in the UK at the moment. So within trade in general, retail is experiencing some issues and difficulties around things like the UK CA and CE marking. Recently, government announced an extra 2 years to use the CE marking, which is great. Some of my retail members were complaining a little bit that they'd been prepared for this for years and years and spent loads of time, money and effort to get this right, to get the CE marking well in place, for the government to then make a word that we're all familiar with, a U-turn. We also look towards things like the Northern Ireland Protocol and how that's going to affect product safety and regulation. There is the Product Liability Directive that's also being reviewed as well. So there's a lot of things going on in product safety and regulation for retailers at the moment. Just want to end by saying that retailers are, of course, committed to providing products that surprise and delight consumers and keep them safe. And I finish with 1 minute 30 to go. Fast talking there being one of my skills.
Thanks, Adrian. Thank you, Adrian. I'll just moved through. Just on the new Product Liability Directive project, indeed, you were talking about the 6 years in England, that's it? Well, they're aiming at pushing the statute of limitation from 10 to 15 years now, at least at European level. And also, so that you're aware, there's a whole thing about presumption of defect, presumption of causal link, and this presumption is reinforced if the technical aspects of the issue are perceived by courts as being too complex scientifically. So basically, the more it should be difficult to prove a defect in a causal link, the easier it will be for plaintiffs to obtain a recognition. Now I stop for real with bad news.
Hello, thanks for having me. So I'm going to start by touching on the impact of throwaway electronics. We all know that e-waste is a problem. It's the fastest growing waste stream in the world, and many of us will know that the UK is the second highest producer of e-waste per person. So there's a problem from that side of things. Probably less people know about the impact in terms of the resources that go into the product in the first place. So if you look at small electronics, and if you look at the carbon dioxide produced in the whole lifetime from cradle to grave, for most of them, more than 50% of the carbon emissions are produced before they even get into your hands. For products like blenders, laptops, smartphones, it's 80%. So we have a real need to keep product in use for as long as possible. So let's look a bit at the barriers, and this is mostly looking at the barriers to repair. So product design, whether intentionally or not, it's not easy to repair products these days. It's hard to get into, screws are hidden, they're glued together. When you get in, it's all glued together. Or it can take ages. You have to remove 50 screws just to get to a part that's actually quite likely to fail. So that makes it harder and more dangerous to repair. Warranties are a fraction of the expected lifetime of a product, and that's giving a message to consumers. So they are, once the warranty has expired, they're not going to think about repair. If they do, it's expensive, it's hard to find, and we know that there's a shortage across the board of repairers, whether that's kind of repairers working for manufacturers or on the high street. So generally, repair is a lot harder than it should be, and it's an afterthought, and that has implications on safety. So if we look at how we could address these, first of all, there's been lots of talk of right to repair today, but making the official spare parts available and providing the proper information on how to repair can only make repair safer. Not providing that information is not going to stop people trying to repair their products. It's just going to make it more dangerous. So we need to lean into this and make it work, and we need to apply it to all products, ideally sooner than in the next 50 years, which if we carry on at the pace we're going on, that's when all products will be covered. We need to design for repair. So the products on the screen here are the Fairphone, which most people have heard of, the Framework laptop, which maybe less people have, but these are modular designs. So the parts that are most likely to fail, you can clip out and clip back in. So not only does that mean that products are more repairable and they will last longer, it makes it safer. You're not having to get into the innards to try and replace something that's broken. There aren't enough examples of this outside the tech world, and I think that's a big challenge to manufacturers. Where are the modular appliances? Let's bring that on and make repair safer. Software is something that isn't talked about enough. There was a study earlier on this year where consumers expect there to be software support for a lot longer than they get. What that means is that people will just use unsupported products, and that's introducing a real level of vulnerability, especially as smart products are on the rise. We need clarity at point of sale. People need to know how long their products are expected to last, how repairable they are, and as I said, they need to know how long the software support is available for. And we need alternative options. It needs to not be all about buying new, and consumers are starting to tell us that. So leasing and rental means that the products will go back to the manufacturers and retailers so that you can repair them safely. Buying back and increasing the sale of refurbished products means that people can keep things in use for longer, and you can keep it safe. And of course we need official extended repair services provided. And all of this allows a better relationship with consumers. It's not a bad thing for manufacturers and retailers to build up this relationship, and they come back to you. And so my main point here is that it's not either repair or product safety. If repair is prioritised, if it's put at the centre of product design and support post-sale, then it can be safer too. So let's embrace repair, and we'll have safer products. Thank you.
So thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Some interesting points here from both Adrian and Fiona and Sylvia already raised. I'm going to give you a perspective also from a manufacturing point of view and some of the challenges about making products more sustainable but safer at the same time. Now, most businesses do have a plan, but many do not, in terms of how are they going to achieve either net zero or sustainability. Here's some research from Axel Waste Management, who I work with, and it says 29% of companies do not have a net zero target or a plan on how they're going to achieve more from a sustainability part. So everything's got to start with that plan on how you achieve it, whether that be a net zero target, whether it be about improving repairability, to design products that are more sustainable. And it starts with design. Fiona is right in terms of starting with design to make sure that products can be repaired and repaired easier. Then it's focusing on the manufacturing process itself, whether that be reducing emissions, whether it be reducing waste, the transportation of the product. So not only making it, but how do you get it to the consumer? Fiona just talked about 50% before you've even got it in your hands. And then the product itself as well, whether that's using less energy, recycled components, but also not only thinking about the repairability of it, but at some point, the recyclability of it. This will be touched on in another session later this afternoon, but thinking about the product from a whole life cycle point, not just making it to sell it to a consumer. Thinking about it from cradle to grave is absolutely vital. And making a product more repairable is critical to ensure safe, extended life. There's a couple of things we need to address though. One about obsolescence. There's often talk that products are not built as they used to, or that obsolescence is built in, and that's simply not true. What manufacturer or brand is going to want your product to break down and risk disloyalty? Think about the power of recommendations and reviews. That's going to damage future sales. Manufacturers absolutely welcome the right to repair. Been a lot of talk about it already, and it'll continue, but it has to be done safely. We have to ensure that there's not unintended consequences, despite the best intentions of causing an issue. So we want to make sure that consumers continue using our products. We want them to be able to repair. We want them to be able to continue using them. But we also want to understand and make sure that people care and maintain them. Despite what everybody would probably say in public, people don't take care of their products. They don't maintain them as they should. So is there a challenge that extending their life actually causes a risk because it's extending the amount of products that are not cared for? Does extending life and making sure that actually not buying new is best? Not always. My washing machine at home, for example, is 3.5 years old, but the same product, same specification today, uses 40% less energy. And that 40% equates to £40 a year in running costs. Now, no manufacturer wants you to change that product that's 3 years old. Absolutely not. I've already talked about loyalty and future sales, but knowing that information and helping to make a more sustainable choice in the future is really important. Does it bring an issue that we need to talk about communication? It was referred to earlier in terms of clarity and information to consumers. And Gunjan showed earlier, there's a great campaign from Amdia called Know What's What, and this really helps with that because it not only tries to show an explanation of the energy ratings, and that's not easy, but also talks about lifetime costs, running costs for a new appliance, but then making it clear in terms of repair versus replace. And from that, how a consumer can make the right choice for them. Just making simple changes to the products you already own can help save up to £500 a year. So using the campaign, if you haven't seen it yet, I really urge you to visit the AMDIA website, because manufacturers will continue to make products that are more sustainable. They'll continue to improve design to make it more repairable and recyclable at the end, but also providing better information, clearer to consumers, so they can make the right choice that's important for them and for the planet. Thank you.
Thank you all. So we have a number of questions on Slido. I don't know if you can put it on screen or not. And one of them was actually a question that I wanted to ask you, which is that what we see in court today is an increasing number of cases, product liability cases that are filed by consumers who have had their appliances either repaired by a non-certified or non-authorized repairer or by themselves thanks to YouTube, and then face a safety issue or even just a product broken up for good. How to address this? Do you have any insight? Maybe Ian first, yeah?
Sure, yeah, you have to, not well before kind of right to repair came in, it was really important to be able to provide the materials and the spare parts so that competent or qualified, in certain cases, repairers could actually undertake that repair. Our position has always been, if you don't know what you're doing, don't do it. But we don't want a position where the consumer then is thinking, but the repair is not an option. It's absolutely vital that they can see that there is a repair choice there, but they just need to make sure that it's done safely, and if they're not either qualified or competent to do it, don't try it.
So there's this follow-up question which has a lot of likes, which is, if a maker provides detailed documentation on how to repair, how can it mitigate the risk of litigation if repair is then carried out badly by a consumer? So that's follow-up to what you were saying.
Yes, it's a good question, it's a good follow-up. I think in terms of mitigating it from a risk point of view, you've provided the detailed documentation and been very clear on what someone needs to do and how they should be doing it. I think from that point of view, if there's then an issue, as long as a qualified engineer can go out and point to what might have been done incorrectly, that there was not an issue with the product in the first place, I think that's the best way to do it.
Does it exist, for instance, at retail level or other levels, like there is in other types of industry, like cosmetics or pharma, some kind of platform whereby consumers can put in issues that they're facing so that manufacturers can see what is a revolving issue that comes up numerous times for a same product, let's say, so that manufacturers can tweak a bit the information that they provide to repair, for instance?
I think from retail, the nearest you've got really is things like Trustpilot and Google reviews, which tend to be a place where consumers will vent their frustrations at products. I think also, just to add to Ian's comments, the retail fear around right to repair is that consumers will have a go at repairing something themselves and make a previous product that was safe unsafe, which then leads to that brand's reputation being damaged, because they'll see that, in consumers' minds that product is unsafe, even though they won't look at the fact it was a consumer just having a go using YouTube, etc.
And just adding on that, from a reviews point of view, whether it be Trustpilot, Google reviews, there are other review platforms, it's really important for manufacturers to embrace that as well, so that they can see what the consumers are saying about their products. Not just in terms of whether there's a safety issue, whether there be a usability issue, or actually on the other side, something that they really like, that you would then want to feed into your design stage in terms of making that better for the next products as well. There
are then questions about how to involve suppliers into this whole system of repairability. Suppliers either of components to really look at the durability of each component and how to work that out, but also, Fiona, you were mentioning software, so there's the question of saying that some software suppliers make it hard to keep all devices working, and how to encourage those suppliers either to change, to participate in the process of encouraging for repairability.
So just on the software issue, I think the example used was Windows 10 and 11, and we are campaigning on that. And what we're campaigning on first is to keep Windows 10 going for longer. So if people aren't familiar with it, there's an issue around Windows 11 which it won't work on a lot of laptops. So there's going to be a lot of e-waste from people kind of changing their devices to make it work. So that's a bit about we're campaigning for longer support. But this is coming in a little bit in legislation. So the PSTI bill that was talked about this morning, that requires manufacturers to kind of be upfront about how long they'll support for. We hope that a next step will be kind of making sure that software is available for the whole life of the product. And there's also legislation coming through the EU around that. So I think a two-pronged approach will eventually work, and as we've seen, kind of manufacturers respond to what consumers want eventually.
Do you have, Ian, maybe on the components or the suppliers of the spare parts?
Yeah,
maybe?
I think there are certain components and spare parts that absolutely should be involved in that, for sure.
Okay. Then there are questions about how to assess the safety of a repaired product once it's repaired. How do you engage in that process? Maybe at the retail level, maybe when you receive a claim or when there are people complaining about the safety of a product once it's repaired, how do you assess what is the origin of the issue? The first product as it was sold, or the reparation?
It's a difficult one.
It's a lawyer's question.
It sort of is covered in the Consumer Rights Act to a degree. There's the reverse burden of proof, where for the first 6 months, the fault is deemed to have been there but at the point of sale, but after 6 months, the consumer then has to prove. So I think sometimes if a consumer approaches a retailer with a fault, I suppose the length of time it's taken for that fault to elapse needs to be taken into account. And of course there are, I think it's mentioned in one of the questions there, things like warranty terms and conditions that will be very, very clear on what will happen if consumers attempt repairability. And anyone who's sort of taken apart electrical goods will see the amount of stickers that are on there saying warranty void if removed.
I think it's really important to also then have good record keeping from certainly whether it be a manufacturing or retail point of view, in terms of that consumer history of the product. Is there something that that as the manufacturer, your own engineering team have been out to see it, so you can understand if you haven't, and when you then inspect the product that something has clearly changed, it was done by someone else.
Music to my ears. It's sometimes as well, it's very difficult in those types of cases to really know what the consumer did. You have some consumers who would deny having done some types of repair or going to a non-authorized repairer, and then you have to find out what really happened, and maybe a way to also have a global system whereby you would know that your product has been repaired in one way or the other would be useful. I see that we have 2 minutes left. I don't really know questions from the floor. Does this, someone wants to just stand up and speak? I just saw a question that was interesting to me because it referred to France, which was, do you think that we should have a labeling scheme for repair? Just a specific label if you did it right or you didn't do it right, or through specific repairers. I don't know how it would work, but what do you think, Fiona?
Yeah, absolutely. And that scheme has been shown to influence purchases, decision-making made at purchase, and then it has had a knock-on effect on manufacturers, making things differently and responding to that. So people clearly want to know this, and if it's done in the right way, and the French one was done really well, it had really good customer recognition, that it can have a real impact. So definitely in favour of that.
I think there's a key there in terms of doing it the right way, because and I talked about giving consumers information to make the right choice, or the most informed choice that they can, whether that be repairability, recyclability as well, Also, obviously there's a lot of ongoing work in terms of energy and water labelling as well. So it's making sure that the consumer is not overpowered, but that it's simplified to make it really easy for them to then make an informed choice. But I think it's important that they can see that for sure.
Great. Well, I think that the last. Oh, do you want?
So,
you
yeah,
wanted to? Sorry.
I think all the data is pointing towards consumers wanting to know more about their products, how repairable they are, how sustainable they are, and that's proved by all the statistics that we've given today. I think the only thing to be wary of is a lot of it can be information overload. So you can have a product that's going to have an energy label, a water efficiency label, and then a repairability scale. Who decides that? Are we going to diverge from the EU on that? And it's just one of those things. It's going to be a bit of a too much information.
I think that was my takeaway that I wanted to give, which was also be careful what you say, be careful what you state, because as I mentioned at the very beginning, and I think that's important, you're being watched, so be careful. If I may we can thank the panel. Thank you very much. We complied with the time.